Well, I wonder what you had for breakfast this morning. Did you perhaps have some toast or a roll? What about lunch? Did you have bread roll with soup or beans on toast or a sandwich? Just suppose that that's all you had today. Toast, a slice of bread, a bread roll. Nothing more. We could probably all cope with that, couldn't we? But suppose you had that tomorrow, and then the next day, and then the next day, and the next day, and nothing else but bread. Imagine how the Israelites felt in the wilderness after they'd left Egypt. I'm sure you know the story. Their life in Egypt was pretty grim. They were slaves. They worked till they dropped. But at least they had food on the table. The Bible tells us that they had, among other things, grain and figs and grapes and pomegranates. Good food. And in the wilderness, they longed to be back in Egypt. They'd left all that behind, and now they were hungry. "Why have you brought us out here," they said to Moses, "when we have nothing to eat?" I'm sure you know what happened. God sent manna and quail every day for them. It was a monotonous diet, admittedly, but it fully sustained them. But even then, they grumbled. They might have been on paper God's people, but they weren't showing much faith, were they? Just grumbling. People, of course, will grumble even with the best food in front of them. Too much, too hot, too cold, too tough, too soft, too rich, too spicy, not enough flavour, not cooked enough, overcooked, and so it goes on. Grumbling is the exact opposite of being thankful. Of course, I hope no one complains about the food at Upton, Dene. I hope you're grateful. I hope you appreciate all that is prepared for you. But harvest is a great time for us to think about these things and all the things that God gives us, food especially, and to be grateful for it all. We sang, "Come, ye thankful people, come, raise the song of harvest home." You may have heard how prices are going up in the shops at an alarming rate, and many people are worrying genuinely about how they're going to heat their homes and feed their families over the winter. But we need to stop and think sometimes about how blessed we are compared with people in so many other countries. When compared with refugee people, when compared with those forced out of their homes by war or floods or typhoons or earthquakes. They've been happening in the Far East, they've been happening in America. Now, sometimes as we get older, our appetite begins to wane. But still, what variety we can enjoy, what flavours, what freshness, and what satisfaction there is after a good meal. We all know what it feels like, don't we, to be well fed when our tummies are full of good things. So in this harvest service, it's important to remember God's goodness to us. It's good to remember God's goodness to us and to be thankful. But it's also important, isn't it, to remember God's goodness to us in other ways, and to be thankful for them as well. Now, our Bible reading today, if you remember, it follows one of the accounts of the feeding of the 5,000, by Jesus, of course. I'm sure I don't need to remind you of that story, but just imagine how the disciples were feeling about this man that they were following. First, he feeds over 5,000 people with just a few loaves and a few fish. And then they see him walking on the water towards them on the surface of the lake, on which their boat was struggling in a strong wind. Just for a moment, put yourselves there. What thoughts would be racing through your minds at that moment after what you'd seen and what you were observing now? I'm sure the disciples' minds were boggling. But in our reading, Jesus develops the thinking of the disciples, and our thinking of too, of course, away from the miracles, especially away from the loaves and the fish, and towards himself. Not so much a spectacular miracle worker as a spectacular saviour. What is it he says? I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst. Then he says, I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh. Aren't they amazing claims? What's Jesus saying here? He's saying that we have a hunger and a thirst within us that food and drink cannot satisfy. If we're hungry, eating grass won't satisfy us, will it? Nothing's to be gained by feeding our hunger with things that don't satisfy. And Jesus tells us we have a spiritual hunger that nothing can satisfy except him. That's what he means when he says, I am the bread of life. Not bread that satisfies an empty and needy stomach, but spiritual bread that satisfies an empty and needy soul. I wonder if that's you. Here is Upton Dene. Here in Upton Dene, you have all the care and company you need. You're well fed and watered. But are you still aware, perhaps as thoughts of eternity press on you more urgently, of being an empty and hungry soul? Well, here, as we think of harvest blessings today, is the greatest blessing of all, Jesus himself. Not so much a spectacular miracle worker, but a spectacular saviour. One who can satisfy us at the deepest level, not just now, but for eternity. That's why he came. That's why he died on the cross. That's why he rose again. That's why he ascended triumphantly into heaven, to be a saviour and a supplier and a sustainer of all those who will put their trust in him. Now, perhaps he is already your hope. And then thank God for his wonderful provision. But if not, then look to him as Jesus invited his disciples. He said, this is the will of my Father, that everyone who looks on the Son and believes on him should have eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. Isn't that an extraordinary invitation? Isn't that an extraordinary opportunity? Now let's sing our final hymn.